Ruthless as a wolf, the War Duke wanted one thing. The Earl's daughter promised to another. If you're enjoying this story of a ruthless duke, a desperate bargain, and a love that defied society, I'd be so grateful for a like or a subscribe. It helps me bring you more tales of high stakes and unconventional passion. Tell me in the comments, do you think Lucian deserved a second chance after the chaos he caused? 1. The crowd at the Duchess of Waverley's London ball was a glittering, swirling mass of silk and gossip. Suddenly, every conversation died. A stillness fell over the room, as if the music had stopped, even though the orchestra played on. Lucian Grey, Duke of Blackstone, had entered. He was the infamous War Duke, a figure of awe and dread, known for being ruthless as a wolf, both on the brutal battlefields of the continent and in the silent, deadly trenches of Parliament. Whispers zipped through the room like shrapnel. They say he broke a French line with half the men, one elderly gentleman muttered into his champagne glass. A nervous lady replied, "They say he ruined a railway magnate last month over a contract just because the man was late on payment." Lucian, tall and dark in his perfect evening coat, looked utterly bored. He seemed out of place among the chandeliers and the small talk, like a blade left carelessly on a delicate porcelain shelf. He had spent his adult life in pursuit of decisive victory, not decorative pleasantries. Then, his eyes caught on one person. Near the musicians, where the light was softer, stood Lady Chloe Ashbury, laughing with a friend. She wasn't posing. Her head was tilted back slightly. Her smile was quick and genuine, and her eyes, Lucian noted instantly, were intelligent. She looked like she belonged there, but wasn't desperate to be noticed. A minor comic beat broke the silence. Lucian's old comrade, Captain Rowan, leaned close to his duke's ear. "Careful, Lucian. That look you just got means you're about to start another campaign. Try to keep this one off the front page." Lucian ignored him completely. As he would a farmer's warning about bad weather, useful information, but irrelevant to his immediate focus. Lucian's composure was legendary, but he felt a sharp internal jolt. He had spent years wanting nothing for himself, existing only for duty and strategy. Now, suddenly, he wanted one thing, that laughing woman, and he wanted her with a surprising intensity. He stopped the nearest footman and demanded to be taken to the host. He asked simply, "Who is the lady near the orchestra, the one in the blue gown?" He was already planning his approach, calculating the distance and the necessary moves. The host, Lord Waverley, delivered the gut punch. "Ah, Lady Chloe. She's the only daughter of Henry Ashbury, Earl of Merrowell. A lovely girl, Lucian. But I'm afraid she is newly promised to Julian Fairburn, Marquess of Eastmere." Waverley explained that the match was arranged to rescue her father's troubled finances and secure the Merrowell estate. Lucian's reaction was masterful. Outwardly, his face remained cold and unreadable, giving nothing away. But inwardly, he felt a sharp, surprising pain. The kind of precise, deep wound a clean sword can deliver. She was already spoken for, an asset assigned to another's ledger. The first clash, human and quiet, followed quickly. Lucian had the host introduce him to Chloe and Julian in one small circle. Chloe rose to the challenge immediately. She was polite, certainly, but she did not simper or flutter her eyelashes. She looked Lucian right in the eye, and after a moment's consideration, she cracked a dry little joke. "Welcome, Your Grace. I suspect you prefer battlefields to ballrooms, just as I prefer libraries to polite gossip." Lucian actually smiled. A genuine, fleeting movement that made the few people watching gasp. "Lady Chloe," he answered, his voice deep and measured, "I prefer decisive action over prolonged discomfort. On that count, ballrooms are far worse than any field." Julian Fairburn, the Marquess of Eastmere, watched the exchange with civil, measured reserve. He was clearly not a villain, just a handsome, rather stiff man doing his duty to his own family and an indebted one. He was polite, and perhaps a little weary of the arrangement himself. Lucian observed them all. He saw the genuine, warm affection Chloe held for her father, who was standing across the room, looking pale but proud. He also saw the weight on Chloe's shoulders when people approached to congratulate her on the upcoming marriage, a resignation, not joy. The conversation moved on to boring political matters, and Lucian barely participated. By the end of the small circle, Lucian had said almost nothing that could be called romantic aloud. But, internally, the War Duke had decided. He looked at the lovely, intelligent woman who joked about battlefields and resigned herself to duty, and he knew he would have her, even if it meant a different kind of war. Lucian left the ball early, ignoring the flurry of invitations and the flattery aimed at his back. He found Rowan waiting by the doors, a questioning look on his face. Lucian simply stated his conclusion, his voice low and determined. The Earl's daughter is promised to another. Rowan raised an eyebrow. I gathered that, Lucian. So, are we calling off the troops? Lucian's eyes narrowed, the wolf side of his nature gleaming. Then we'll have to see how firm that promise really is. The central conflict was set, and the Duke's calculating, ruthless determination was fully engaged. 2. The next morning, the reality of the situation was heavy on Chloe's shoulders. She walked with her father, the Earl of Merrywell, in the small, slightly shabby townhouse garden. The Merrywell estate might have the grand name, but it had little else. The reality was simple. The estate was deep in debt. The staff had been cut back quietly over the last year, and the new uniforms were looking decidedly threadbare. Her father's health was not great. The strain of keeping up appearances was wearing him down. Chloe reassured him as they walked past the sad-looking rose bushes. I'm fine with the match, Papa. Truly. Julian is kind enough, respectable, and very serious about his estate duties. There are worse fates than a quiet marriage with a man who will give you security. She tried to inject a bit of light humour. Besides, if I can tolerate your dreadful pipe tobacco filling the library every night, I can certainly tolerate a solemn husband who never speaks above a murmur. Her father chuckled weakly, but his eyes were still heavy with worry. I just want you to be safe, my girl, and happy. I will be safe, Papa, she promised, avoiding the word happy. Lucian's first move came 2 days later. He visited the Earl officially, on business. The meeting was formal, correct, and held in the musty library. Lucian spent an hour discussing an investment in a canal or railway that might, miraculously, rescue Merrywell's immediate finances and allow the Earl to pay off some of the most pressing creditors. The Earl was breathless with hope. Lucian's financial reputation was as formidable as his military one. Only at the very end of the meeting did Lucian ask the blunt, necessary question, his voice dropping to a serious, calculated pitch. Earl Merrywell, I must ask you plainly, is the engagement to the Marquess of Eastmere formally binding? Has the marriage contract been signed by all parties? The Earl, recovering from the financial discussion, frowned. It is not signed, but our word is given, Your Grace, publicly. Would you? Lucian continued, leaning forward. Consider another proposal. Say, one from a duke who could offer a superior financial settlement for the estate, ensuring your complete solvency. The Earl was deeply tempted. A duke, as a son-in-law, was far more powerful than a marquess, and the freedom from debt would be like air. But he was a man of honour. He told Lucian no. I feel bound by my word to Julian and the Fairburn family, Your Grace. They stepped in when others would not. And I won't make Chloe a bargaining chip twice. Lucian accepted the refusal with polite, unreadable composure. He left quietly, but the wolf in him was now fully awake. He had tried negotiation and found the door shut. Lucian and Chloe met again a few days later at a small music hall afternoon tea. held at the house of a mutual acquaintance. The setting was dull, but the air between them was sharp. They ended up seated nearby, separated only by a chaperone, a large, elderly lady who was half dozing in the warmth of the room. They spoke about the mundane, then drifted toward the philosophical. "Does anything in this room feel real to you, Your Grace?" Chloe asked, looking around at the polite smiles and the excessive lace. The question was blunt but sincere, suggesting she sensed his own internal exile. Lucian hesitated, then answered honestly, without his usual calculation. "You do," he said, the words barely a whisper. He instantly looked away, as if he had said too much, breaking his own rules of engagement. She reminded him, gently but firmly, of the impossible situation. "I am engaged, Your Grace. I accept my duty. I don't want whispered scandals that hurt my father or Julian. Please respect that." The emotional nuance was clear. She was not in love with Julian, but she respected him and clung to the certainty of duty. The security of a planned, peaceful life, even a cold one, felt safer than risking chaos with a man like the War Duke. Julian was soon revealed as a human being, not a caricature villain. Chloe had a brief, clipped scene with him the following day. He was direct. He admitted he chose the match to satisfy his own family's financial calculations and stabilize both estates a fair trade. He was not passionate, he confessed, but he promised to treat her with respect and unfailing kindness. Chloe walked away thinking, "He has never once asked what I want, but he's never lied to me either." Lucian watched Chloe leave the musicale with Julian, his jaw tight. He turned to Rowan, his eyes hard and focused. Negotiation has failed. Time to change tactics. Rowan looked uneasy. "We're talking about people, Lucian, not Prussian cavalry." Lucian merely answered, "The stakes are higher now, Rowan. The stakes are higher." 3. The War Duke went to war, but this time the battlefield was London society, and the weapons were influence and calculated risk. Lucian began his social campaign. He used his vast financial influence to offer the Earl a more generous financial arrangement than the Marquess could ever dream of providing. This was done quietly, through a lawyer, but the news was destined to leak. More devastatingly, Lucian quietly let it slip in the right circles, through carefully chosen confidantes and gossips, that he would marry Lady Chloe without requiring a dowry. In fact, he would settle his own fortune on her. Society reacted immediately. Mothers and matchmaking aunties buzzed with frantic energy. A duke in pursuit of an engaged woman was scandal, yes, but a wealthy, powerful duke was big news. Subtle pressure began to mount on the Earl. Surely a duke is a better match for dear Chloe. Think of the security. The consequence, which Lucian had not calculated, was the unintended damage to Chloe. She became the centre of unwanted attention. Ladies were suddenly far too interested in her wardrobe and her manners, looking for signs that she was trying to attract the Duke. Other girls whispered that she was playing two men, a Duke and a Marquess, for her own ambition. There was a small, painful, comic moment at a dinner party. A young, naive debutante approached Chloe and asked if she was going to trade Julian for the Duke, like one trades dance partners. Chloe forced a polite laugh, but she felt a deep, wrenching wave of humiliation. Her life had become a public spectacle, and the men were not the ones being judged. The pressure soon led to a confrontation. Chloe cornered Lucian in a secluded gallery at a large dinner. She confronted him directly, her voice low and furious. "You are using my life as another campaign, Your Grace. You're moving pieces on a board while I'm the one being pushed around." She accused him of ruthlessness, not of love. "This is not courtship. This is a siege. Do you not understand that my reputation, my only worth, is being destroyed by your strategies?" Lucian, the hardened War Duke, was momentarily stunned. He genuinely had not understood the personal cost to her. He had focused only on the strategic outcome, making her available and not the human collateral. He admitted his mistake. "I apologize, Chloe. Truly. I have only ever solved problems as I would a military challenge. Leverage, pressure, position. I saw that your father needed funds, and I have them. It seemed logical." There was an emotional crack in his icy exterior. He confessed, the admission heavy with effort. "You are the first thing I've wanted for myself since the war, Lady Chloe, and I don't know how to want gently." This was the first moment where Chloe believed he truly saw her as a person, not just a prize to be won, but the damage was done. Julian the Marquess was soon pushed into a corner. He learned of Lucian's offers and society's growing expectation that he step aside for the Duke. He was angry, not purely from wounded pride, but from the sense that his word and his family's financial calculations were thrown into chaos. He confronted Chloe, not with cruelty, but with a clipped, cold tone. "If you prefer Blackstone, say so, Chloe. Say it plainly. I will not be made a fool of in front of all of London, waiting for the Duke to decide whether my family is worthy of your hand." She insisted that she had done nothing to encourage Lucian, but the tension was now unbearable. Their polite, safe arrangement had exploded into public scandal. The consequences hit home. The Earl, already frail, had a health scare, a severe chest pain, triggered by the unrelenting stress and gossip. Chloe realized the terrifying truth. Her father was the one paying for these strategies. Lucian's ruthless campaign, however well-intentioned, was hurting the person she loved most. In a decisive moment, Chloe retired to her room and sent Lucian a brief, handwritten note. It contained only a few desperate lines. "Please, no more campaigns. If you care for me at all, stop. 4. Lucian read Chloe's note in his study. For once, the War Duke actually stopped. Rowan, watching him closely, leaned against the doorframe. "It's a retreat, Lucian. Sometimes winning means not firing the next shot." Lucian, genuinely shaken by the thought that he was causing distress to the woman he desired, rethought what ruthless should mean. It meant not just forcing outcomes, but protecting the person he wanted, even from his own impulsive strategies. Meanwhile, Chloe faced the heart of the problem herself. She knew that simply stopping Lucian wouldn't solve her engagement problem with Julian. She visited Julian privately, ensuring the setting was public and respectable. The Earl's drawing room, with the door deliberately open. She was direct and honest. "Julian," she began, "do you actually want to marry me, or do we both just need the stability that this marriage represents?" Julian hesitated, then looked away. He admitted that his family was pressuring him relentlessly. He then made his own confession. He too had someone else he cared about, a widowed childhood friend whose lack of fortune his family considered beneath him. This confession made him more sympathetic, not less. He was trapped by duty, just like Chloe. With this realistic adult understanding, Chloe proposed a solution that was radical but sane. "We end this engagement mutually," she stated. "We cite incompatibility, a private disagreement over management of the estates rather than scandal." She continued, outlining the financial solution. "Lucian is prepared to cover the financial penalties and provide a separate, discreet investment that protects both our family's reputations and keeps the creditors away from my father." Julian was wary, but tempted by the possibility of freedom. "It sounds like madness, Lady Chloe. It sounds utterly impossible." "Perhaps," Chloe answered, her resolve firm. "But it's the only kind where everyone breathes afterwards." Julian agreed to the terms. He would not poison society against them, and would quietly pursue the woman he actually cared for once the storm settled. Chloe, exhausted but relieved, returned home and spoke to her maid. "I thought adulthood meant nice gloves and tea," she joked wearily. "No one mentioned renegotiating my own life like a trade agreement." The maid snorted and said, "My lady, They never mention the interesting parts. Chloe then sought out Lucian in a quiet corner of Hyde Park, where they could speak privately yet publicly. She told him plainly what she had arranged with Julian. Then she set her condition for Lucian. "If we are to be anything, Your Grace, you must stop treating my life like a campaign. No more pressure, no more games. Ask, don't maneuver. I won't tolerate it." Lucian listened, and for once, he didn't argue, didn't strategize, and didn't calculate. He simply agreed. He promised to handle the financial side discreetly with Julian and the Earl, and to respect whatever Chloe ultimately decided about their future. He left her with a simple bow. Chloe returned home to find Julian had already sent a formal letter to her father, withdrawing from the engagement on mutual and respectful terms. Her father was shocked, but had survived the stress. "You've just stepped off a cliff, Chloe," he said weakly, still recovering. She smiled, a mix of triumph and fear. "Maybe, Papa, but I chose the cliff myself." 5. Society reacted exactly as expected. There was a flood of gossip, but the careful, mutual language of the broken engagement limited the lasting damage. Some thought Chloe had jilted a marquess for a duke. Others suspected Julian had second thoughts, but no one could point to a clear scandal. The Earl of Merriwell met privately with Lucian. Lucian admitted he would settle certain debts and fund a project on Merriwell land, but insisted, "I do this whether Chloe ever chooses to marry me or not. I owe you that much for the chaos I caused." The Earl, grudgingly impressed by this unexpected honesty and generosity, began to see Lucian as more than a blunt instrument. The time for waiting ended a week later. Lucian visited Merriwell to make the actual proposal quiet, not theatrical, held in her father's library. He stood before her, no longer the ruthless duke, but a man making a genuine appeal. "I want you, Chloe, not as a prize, not as a victory over another man, but as my wife, with the full knowledge of what life with me entails." He admitted his deep flaws. "I am still learning how not to fight every problem like an enemy army." Chloe didn't melt instantly. She asked the practical questions that mattered. Where would they live? How would he treat her father, who was still frail? What kind of liberty would she have in their marriage? There was a small, warm laugh when she looked at him and said, "And if I disagree with you, Your Grace?" He answered with a sincerity she hadn't expected. "Then I hope you'll tell me, Lady Chloe, before you start negotiating with my enemies." She accepted, not in a swoon, but with calm resolve. "I don't know if I'm brave enough to be a duchess, Lucian, but I know I'd regret not trying more than I regret anything that's happened so far." Her father gave his blessing, more emotional than he expected. "If you're going to choose trouble, at least you've chosen a man who will face it with you." The wedding was small but well attended. Some guests were excited, some cautious, and some clearly judging. Captain Rowan was seen whispering to a friend that it was the first battle Blackstone's gone into smiling. During the ceremony, Chloe caught Lucian's eye as the vicar spoke about peaceful unions, and both of them barely contained a laugh. Months later at Blackstone Hall, their life had settled into a rhythm. Chloe was learning estate matters, occasionally arguing with Lucian over tenant reforms. They had small, very human disagreements, then figured things out over late-night tea. A neighbour commented to Chloe one afternoon that the War Duke was still as ruthless as a wolf. She smiled, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. "He is," she replied, "but he finally knows what's worth fighting for." The story closed on them walking the grounds at dusk. They were discussing a complicated tenant dispute and the menu for an upcoming dinner in the same breath. Real love, Chloe realized, was not just fireworks and scandal, but two flawed people choosing each other and their messy, shared life, day after day. And so, dear listeners, the War Duke, who was ruthless as a wolf, learned that the most satisfying victory was not won by fighting, but by finally admitting what his heart truly wanted and giving the woman he loved the freedom to choose him. If you enjoyed this tale of high stakes and high courage, please consider liking and subscribing for more stories where love conquers convention.